얘기하고 있긴 해요.
네네, 예, 예. 근데 이 화이트 노이즈는 course, this is mobility session, and we have 6 presenters today. So Korean KDN, we have Mr. Udok-jae. He will be the first to present. So let's welcome him to the stage.
예, 안녕하십니까. 한정 KDN의 우덕재 차장입니다.
Good afternoon. I'm from KEPCO KDM. My name is Udok-jae. Today, I'm going to talk about the autonomous facility monitoring and diagnostic UGV, unmanned ground vehicle, and we actually developed UDR-1 for that purpose. So I will introduce that to you, and remote diagnosing the power utility facilities will also be introduced because we have also developed system for that. Now, so power facilities that run underground, as you see from this clips, if there is a fire or explosion, because it's underground, not only do you have fatality, but there's also socio-economic ripple effects. Probably you saw that also on the news. Now, this type of accident to prevent beforehand, or this type of high-risk sites where repetitive and simple work is being done, we thought it can be done from the off-the-shelf commercial products, and the vehicle currently for the autonomous operation. There are many hardwares now available on the market, and one of them, SLX's unmanned vehicle, is what we purchase off the shelves. And for autonomous operation, radar sensor and stereo camera for measuring distance have been installed. And for power measurement, thermal and actual cameras have also been installed. So this type of software is what we have developed. Autonomous operations software are now many of them open source based. So based on that, high temperatures or repetitive maintenance can now be done by these robots instead of people. Now, this is within our lab. The facilities, we try to test them out using our vehicle. So with the stills from the videos on the right, the objects are identified, and with that thermal information, any abnormality of this devices or facilities can be detected. And we also have depth camera, and like people, they can identify any hurdles. So all these informations are converged. So while autonomous driving, if the facility of interest is registered beforehand by the user, then this vehicle goes around that object to take the measurements and do the diagnostics. Now, this is, I believe, tennis or badminton court. So SLAM is actually real-time location and mapping, and the points that's been predefined and pre-registered by the users are the points where the robots goes around, and the right is the point cloud using the lidar sensor. This is what the robot sees. First, they draw precise map, and within that map, the robot's guesses, estimates where its location may be repetitively. And this is kind of part of the field test done underground. So here, if there's a heavy rainfall, then the pump might be faulty. So whether this pump operates, of course, we can detect through sensor, but through the thermal information, whether it's in operation, when it's time for operation, and with the gauge, the text and numbers are extracted, so that what is the water pressure, hydro pressure, and these data are obtained and used for to analyze for analytic purposes. And then this is basically the unmanned vehicle. People need to turn the light on to do the various diagnosis. But for robots, it cannot turn the light on. So it needs to be able to adjust in a very dark environment. So the left image is the pin light, as you see in the mobile phone. So with only pin light, it moves around. And on the right, this one is AI, based on AI model. So the low light image can be converted into brightening specific spots using the technology. So using the technology, objects or facilities that were not identified in the original image can be further detected. So you see the fire distinguishers and other, those in the square has already been learned by the robots to be identified. So power tunnel, this type of tunnel is very narrow, and it's not easy to move around. And mobile communication is also not available, but we set that up for the pilot test purpose. And as the commercial power is not available here, we are currently developing technologies to compensate for such limitations. Now, if you operate unmanned vehicle, images become very important. So not only images up front, but those at the back and at the side are also sometimes required for the utility facilities. The ones that is front of you is kind of far distant, so you cannot attain accurate information. So while moving, the side facilities to have a detailed recognition of that, the best way is 160 degrees camera. So based on the image from that camera, objects are recognized, and that information or data is obtained. And that technology is currently being developed. For 360 camera, currently, sending real-time image is not really possible. But given that the hardware are continuously advancing, once the technology becomes available for robots, while reducing energy usage without having many cameras on them, with just one 360-degree camera, can have more efficient facility diagnosis. And this one is with the KEPCO Research Center. We're developing this together. So SLAM needed for autonomous driving, or tilting the camera in the optimized angle. That type of robotics technologies are all embedded. So on the car with 8 cameras, and then you have fixed precision GPS sensor, and then through data, and data is obtained, analyzed within the car, and only events are sent to the master server. And the stereo camera up front, you do the distance measuring, and the distance between the car and the object are also calculated. And there's also one thermal camera, and there are about 5 AI models in there. So it could also detect birds' nests. It's one of the hazardous items, and also there is a segment model that only detects electric cables or wires, and also for various defaults of the power devices and gauges can also be detected, because that is been learned. So in the past, with this thermal camera, 3 people were needed to do outdoor diagnostics, but now it's simplified and has become safer with this type of technologies using the uh, various devices. And it's not easy to take photos, big images, because car is constantly moving and you need to have right focus. So this one actually had the right focus, but we thought it was faulty, and it's abnormal erosion there. So the car only does the driving, and data analysis is done by the model that we developed, and then it can be corrected later on. We first identified that there is a leakage in the transformer, but that is further analyzed. Uh, and it becomes false positive, then the machine again does the learning to improve itself. And you see there are different items in this line, and there's a lot of damage. And on the surface, you see something has been broken, or and then it cannot do the power transmission. So there is a lot of detachment that needs to be corrected. So remotely, if we have better technologies for photo taking, then more stable and safe power transmission will become possible. So this type of technologies within the power industry, it's actively being developed. Now, in the past, in the where the people need to work in hazardous conditions, now through the unmanned diagnostic technologies, the work environment can become safer for people. So we do a lot of studies in that area. And this photo is a bird nest. And this is a magpie nest, and usually that causes power outage in early of the year, when the magpies are nesting for their eggs. Then we have to find them, the nests. And how we find them is that if they have nested within the electric cable, then it becomes not easy to find it. So the technologies are continuously being updated. So we've actually found about 80 of this power stations where we could find the bird nest. So we identify them as the hazardous area and do separate maintenance for them. So for this, actually, it's a 4-legged robot, And now the unmanned vehicle that we first created is four-wheeled based machine, but this has four legs and can walk. And the benefits of this is that it can have some stepped pulley, and that helps it to run smoothly. But there are also some disadvantages. This is 3D writer, so this is what this robot obtained as a data. And from view, data is very much shaking because the robot itself cannot stand still. It needs to be in constant movement, sensing to find its location, and for this to do a diagnostic damping, Zimbo, or some technologies where you can obtain more stable images would be required. And for the thermal imaging also, robots, basically it has big batteries, and optimizing energy usage is the key challenge. Of course, if you have a lot of different devices, it will be good, like lights and other sensors, many sensors on them, but that is cuts short operation time. So minimum number of sensors and AI models. There are many good ones in the market, but we also need light weight models to minimize power consumption. So that would be very important. So now we say unmanned vehicle, or people call it robot. And using that, you can do diagnostics of the power systems, and few we already commercialized. And the thing is, the purpose here is, diagnosing using this type of vehicles. The purpose is simple. The people, to protect people and to remove them from hazardous yet simple operation. But just to be fully dependent on unmanned vehicle, there are still challenges like security, because it uses mobile communications and various certifications. All needs to be set up efficiently within the organization, which is not easy. And it also needs to interoperate with other systems. In that case, this one becomes a user, and when person takes an action, you leave a log. So robots leaving a log and linking with other systems should be possible. And robots, even if you make it very well, still, as a user of the robots, you need a dedicated organization or team handling the robots. You need to have understanding of robots to run them and manage them. So, still, we are studying, but actually, it's not fully in operation. It will take some time. So as of now, AI and robotics, not robots, but robotics technology-based approach to increase operation efficiency and accuracy is a research area that is very active. Now, even if there's one CCTV, with the robotics technology, let the vehicle move so that it can take images from wider ranges, and tracking the objects through robots and vehicles would increase the efficiency of the service. So that's about it in terms of my presentation. So within KEPCO KD, power systems are being diagnosed using this robot. I mean, it's developed, and with that in Daejeon, we are in the pilot testing phase. The underground facilities, a very risky area, and also indoor, outdoor in that environment for various facilities. We are doing various validation and pilot tests, but I think we are only at the beginning. So for the unmanned diagnostics, if you require our support or if you're interested, please contact me. Thank you very much.
예, 두 번째
The second presenter is Dr. Lee Sung-in from Korea Energy Economics Institute. He will be talking about the policy trends for enhancing energy efficiency. Good afternoon. I'm Sung-in Lee. My presentation today is about energy industry megatrends, and I will review that. And also, according to the changes in the trends, the energy efficiency is becoming very important day by day. I will talk about the importance of energy efficiency and talk about the policy direction of energy efficiency. I think you know this very well. The big trend in the energy side is what the industry is facing is first and foremost is climate change. And then after climate change is Industry 4.0, including robotics. So these elements with regard to the energy side, I would like to look at the megatrends, which is related to decarbonization, digitalization, and decentralization. And these three Ds are what the energy industry is facing. And how well we respond to this is what can bring about changes in the energy industry. And especially energy efficiency enhancement is becoming ever more important these days. If you look at this slide, the CO2 or greenhouse gases and situation thereof. This is the consumption of primary energy. And from 1800s, now the use of the primary energy has rapidly increased. Accordingly, the emission of greenhouse gases has rapidly grown as well. So energy consumption and emission of greenhouse gases, the trends are in par, are quite similar. And 80% of the greenhouse gases comes from energy use or consumption. So in order to respond to climate change, we need to reduce greenhouse gases, which means that we need to use less energy. And as you know, China is the biggest consumer of primary energy. So globally, number one consumption country is China, second is US, and Korea is number 7 in terms of energy consumption. So with regard to climate change, reducing greenhouse gas emission is very important, and the sea surface has increased a lot, and because of this, temperature has changed a lot, and resulting in global warming. Another thing, according to energy consumption, what is the problem is the fine particles, and particulate matter, PM. And as you can see, we are very highly exposed. And 55.1% of the population are highly exposed to PM. And globally, the China and India are very highly exposed. And PM has a negative impact on the human body. So PM, particulate matter, is number 4 in terms of cause of death. So it has a very health impact. So energy use is not just about energy itself, but it's related to our health and also global warming as well. Next, with regard to climate change, and recently, many countries are making efforts to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. And as you can see here, in case of Korea, after the Paris Agreement, our NDC, we said that we pledged that we will reduce 37% of greenhouse gases reduction compared to BAU. But recently, we pledged that we will reduce 40% of emission compared to 2018. So greenhouse gases compared to 2018, reducing by 40%. That is not easy. And in order to do that, what's important here is that we need to use more renewable energy. And what's more important is that achieving energy efficiency. And major countries around the world has strengthened their INDCs. Second thing that we are facing is Industry 4.0. The fourth industrial revolution comes after the third revolutions. In the past, what happened over 100 years is happening within 10 years. And technology innovation is changing exponentially. And this is what experts are saying. And through digitalization, technologies are changing rapidly and exponentially. And accordingly, the industry should actively respond to this situation and resolve any problems that might arise, especially in terms not only with regard to energy supply, in terms of energy consumption as well. We need to have a lot of changes, and we are facing a lot of changes. During the energy supply plan, what sort of impact does Industry 4.0 have with regard to energy use? From the experts' viewpoint, thus far in Industry 4.0, there are some elements to increase energy use, but in another sense, through intelligent management, we can reduce the use of energy. Therefore, so what element is related to more use of energy and less use of energy? We need to continue to make the observations to get a clear picture. Next is energy consumption. So we need to look at the characteristics of energy consumption in Korea. In case of Korea, our energy consumption since 1970s gradually and steadily increased. However, in case of Germany, US, and Japan, after the 2000s, consumption of primary energy is flat or reducing. Prior to 2000, energy consumption, not many countries reduced this consumption of energy. But after the year 2000 or after 2010, major advanced countries such as US, Germany, and Japan have reduced their consumption of primary energy. Next, I would like to talk about economic growth and energy consumption. In case of Korea, GDP. So if there's economic growth, energy consumption grew as well. But in case of Germany, US, and Japan, even if they achieve economic growth, energy consumption declined. And before, in the past, economic growth and energy consumption, many people thought that they went together. However, major countries and major advanced countries are now showing trends of decoupling of energy, economic growth, and energy consumption. So the decoupling for advanced countries, economic growth and energy consumption are divided, but not for Korea and other countries. So Korea should make efforts so that we can achieve decoupling between economic growth and energy consumption, just as the advanced countries are doing. Now talking about energy efficiency. In order to achieve decoupling, we need to have energy efficiency. So the index for energy efficiency is here, which is the energy intensity. Among the OECD members, 36 OECD countries, our energy intensity is quite high. If it is high, if you look at it from the energy efficiency viewpoint, we have a lot of room to improve, which means that we are using a lot of energy. So energy intensity is high for us. So we're at the bottom within the OECD countries here. So we need to make efforts to improve energy efficiency. No, we need to focus more on energy efficiency and not just only on energy transformation and moving to renewable energy. So thus far, we have not really focused on energy efficiency, but we should do that. Another thing that's important is here. After 2000 and between 2000 and 2010, compared to other advanced countries, we have improved our energy intensity. But from 2010 to 2018, and recently, our improvement of energy intensity is not better than the advanced countries. The improvement rate is not that high, and that is a big problem for us. So in order to achieve decoupling of economic growth and energy consumption, we need to achieve efficiency, energy efficiency, meaning we need to be better on energy intensity in order to achieve the decoupling. But right now, we're not doing that. So right now, we are quite low in the rate of improving energy intensity. So we talk about carbon neutrality and etc. But what we need to focus most on is energy efficiency. So within a short time, we need to have this sort of transformation. This is energy consumption in Korea. So energy transformation is important. And if you look at, this is the yearbook of energy statistics. And in terms of energy transformation, we are 24%, which is quite high in terms of energy consumption, in terms of final energy. So non-energy side is quite high. And this is for the energy statistics in Korea. But in terms of IEA, if you look at this table, you can see the characteristics of energy in Korea. Transformation is 35%, meaning that we're losing a lot of energy, meaning that we have a very clean electricity. But in terms of energy efficiency, we are quite low in energy efficiency, which is electricity. In the process of generation, power generation, there is a lot of loss. So in terms of major countries compared to US, Germany, and Japan, our conversion rate, loss is quite high. And second thing is that non-energy side. In case of Korea, in terms of petrochemicals and steel making and coal and raw coal, we use a lot of them. And a lot of energy is used in the process. And that is a high share of non-energy. And another characteristics of Korea in terms of energy consumption is that our industry has a lot of high share of energy. According to the statistics of IAEA, our industry accounts for 50%, 56%. Industry accounts for 56% of energy consumption. So, meaning that is because the manufacturing accounts for a significant part of our GDP, approximately 37%. In case of US, it's in the 10% or so. In case of US and other countries, compared to the other countries, our manufacturing share is quite high. So we're a manufacturing-centered country. And that is the characteristics of our country, meaning that industry accounts for a lot of energy consumption. In case of the US, transportation accounts for a lot of energy consumption. In case of Europe, Germany, and etc., the building side accounts for a lot of energy consumption. Because in case of Europe, there are a lot of old buildings. You cannot say really high, but there are many buildings which are more than 100 years old. And that is why in case of Europe, especially the consumption of energy is high for buildings. And in case of US, transportation, and many people have their own cars. And that is why energy and consumption in transportation is quite high. In case of Japan, similar to Korea, the building and transportation, similar level to Korea. So I just explained the characteristics of energy consumption of Korea, and this is energy efficiency. So this, from 1970s to the 2000s, or 2010, IEA conducted an analysis. So energy efficiency is quite effective according to the statistics. And I think Times magazine said that energy efficiency is the fifth energy source. But after that, it wasn't really highlighted. And later on, they said energy efficiency is the first field. And among the primary energy, more if we make energy efforts to make energy efficiency, we can save more than what we can save by not using primary energy. So that is why energy efficiency is defined as first fuel within the developing countries. And after 2010s, energy efficiency is not just about reducing greenhouse gases or etc. and creating jobs and achieving economic growth and promoting health and etc. So maybe 23 or 24 effects come out of energy efficiency. And that result came out from the analysis by IEA. And after that, various countries are talking about the economic effects of energy efficiency. In case of US, creating jobs resulting from energy efficiency was like more than 1 million, 1.5 million or so. So a lot of jobs are created through energy efficiency. And in case of Korea, many machines did not use energy before. And in 2019, we made a policy on energy efficiency, and I took part in the project as well. And during that time, energy efficiency enhancement project was not focused on the energy efficiency itself or terminal itself, but expand that to the industry as a whole. And that was the purpose of that project. An energy efficiency project is not just about focusing on energy efficiency itself, but all industries related to energy efficiency. So the policies need to be wider. Next thing that's important is that in carbon neutrality, what we can do is energy efficiency. With regard to climate change, Europe is most active. In case of Europe, after 2010, energy efficiency guideline came out, and energy efficiency first policy was declared within Europe. Not only that, they set the goal for energy reduction, and they set a clear goal, and strong energy efficiency goals were set. And that is currently being pursued. Another thing is that in case of Europe, they mandate the energy suppliers to have a portion of energy efficiency. Those countries who do not pursue this target, they would need to be more stringent in trying to add related measures. In case of Korea, as mentioned, in order to achieve carbon neutrality, we need to reduce carbon emissions by 40% compared to 2018. So in order to achieve these goals, the energy side, many various aspects of energy, including energy efficiency, should be pursued. So in order to we need to achieve this goal within a short time, and in the process, energy efficiency is included. I continue to talk about this and made recommendations to the government since several years ago. And in 2019, the government announced a policy related, which includes the energy efficiency first policies. And I wanted to have it in writing, but it wasn't really in writing, but it was implied. And in terms of diversity, this is quite important. But in terms of the content, I'm not really satisfied with that. And in case of Germany, US, and Japan, I told you that there is decoupling of the economic growth and energy consumption. And the reason is that there were incentives provided to the government. In case of Germany, according to analysis about the government has set around 35,000 won per person for energy efficiency. And the US earmarked about 29,000 won and 25,000 won for Japan. And for Korea, per capita, it's only about 2,000 won. So there is the difference here. Korea consumes the fourth consumer of petroleum around the world. And in order to change the situation, we need to be more proactive in pursuing energy efficiency policy. And that is a must. And I've been talking about this a lot. And the core of energy transformation starts from energy efficiency. We need to consume less and talk about how to provide cleaner energy. That is what we need to do first. But in terms of supply, no, many people think supply is the priority. And that is the thought of the past. Now we have to have the demand create the supply. And Korea, it's unfortunate that Korea is not following this trend thus far. So in that sense, I hope that this will be reflected. We hope that we will have a very strong energy efficiency first policy. And there are a lot of regulations, and we need to have, on the other hand, incentives to pursue more investment in the energy efficiency side. Not only energy efficiency, so not only the user will benefit, but also the businesses who engage in this side should benefit as well. And there could be ripple effects. Now, all machines and all objects are using energy. So everything could be related in terms of promoting industry through energy efficiency. So this is something that we need to move very fast on. So the method for energy efficiency. So people use machines, and we need to make these machines efficient. It's not just about individual machines, but also the system should achieve efficiency, because everything is connected and linked. So we need to achieve efficiency not only in the individual product itself, but also the system should have efficiency. The second is energy use. So energy efficiency is not difficult. No, we should not waste things. That's simple. Even if it's the same product, even if it creates the same economic value, if you use less, that's okay. And this is something that we can do, very easy. And also, we can apply IoT. If we apply IoT technology and Industry 4.0 technologies, we can waste less and achieve energy efficiency not only on the individual product level, but on the system level as well, building level as well as community level, and achieve optimum use. And this is what smart city and smart factory is about. So Industry 4.0 and related technologies can be utilized in the energy side as well. The country that proclaimed Industry 4.0 was Germany, and CPS. It said that it will use CPS and become another emerging advanced country once again. And what they are focusing on the energy side to do that. The energy side, likewise, could be something that Korea can focus on. We can Korea can lead the leadership in the energy side as well. I've continued to talk about this and asserted this. And Industry 4.0 is not just about energy itself. And from the energy perspective, we can look at the industries as well and spread it to other areas. So these policies, the government should also commissioning a lot of projects related to this. And another thing that's important is about pricing, the pricing issues. And we should not delay it anymore. The price signal is very important. In case of Germany, eco tax was adopted in the 1990s, and energy price is quite high. But if you have good policies related to energy efficiency, we can get rebates on that. So the German government, the nominal price is high for electricity, but you can, through incentives, you can get refunded. So actual thing that you pay is quite low. So energy efficiency and expanding renewable energy, and also actively partaking in the decarbonization policy of the government. If that happens, there could be a significant refund. So we also need to benchmark this as well. And in order to move fast, we need to strengthen the price signal. And also we need to achieve decarbonization, becoming carbon neutral by 2050. So compared to 2018, we will reduce emissions by 40%. Now, some people say that it's impossible, but in order to do that, if we reduce emission by 40%, in order to do that, no, even if we pursue new and renewable energy projects, if we do not achieve energy efficiency, that could not happen. And thus far, Korea has not done that in terms of energy efficiency. Another thing is that Industry 4.0, digital technologies need to be fully reflected. Innovation should be welcomed. And Industry 4.0, is very important for Korea. Korea is a IT powerhouse as well as a manufacturing country. So we need to, and these changes in innovation is beneficial, advantages for Korea. So we need to adopt and respond to the situation. So Benz adopted EMS 10 years ago, and etc. And many there are fast movers. And 2015 was just probably the starting year of IoT, and it's not. No, it's only been like 5 to 6 years since then, and there have been many changes since then. And new products are coming out day by day. So in terms of energy efficiency, what I want to emphasize is that we need to pursue energy efficiency first policy. And energy efficiency is not only related to the government policy, but even if there's a government policy, industry should partake in the process. So we need to first recognize the value of energy efficiency, and that thought should spread. And by doing so, partaking in the process, we can achieve the carbon neutralization by Korea. With this, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
예, 다음 섹션.
We'll now move to the next presentation, which will be delivered from the Korea Electronics Technology Institute, Dr. Jung Kang-mo. He's going to talk about various technologies for the power generation development.
안녕하십니까. 저는 전자기
Hello, I'm Jung Kang-mo from Korea Electronics Technology Institute. Actually, I'm going to talk about basic technology for metaverse, not about the power generation I hope for your understanding. Now, metaverse has become the hot topic of the day, and power generation facilities and metaverse are also very much related. So I'll also talk about that a bit. Now, the reason I chose metaverse as my topic is that when I talk with a lot of people, they all say this is the next big thing. But to go into business with this, not many seems to know what to do. I mean, is it virtual reality? Is it augmented reality? And what are technologies that exist? And which area should we go first to make it into business? But Geppetto and other platform that exist, and going into that platform, getting renting your shop there and building something in there. Besides that, there seems to be not much of ideas. And so what I've prepared today is various that there are many technologies, element technology goes into metaverse. So if you know about these technologies, I think there could be also a lot of potential to turn them into business. So this will be what I'm going to talk about. I'll give you overview and then basic concepts of AR, VR, MR. And what is important in metaverse is that metaverse content is important, but it's about transferring real world. So the spatial information is moved, in other words, to the virtual world, and that's called spatial computing. So this spatial computing is one of key technologies of metaverse. So I'm going to explain about that too. Now, in the past, various incidents occurred, and for humankind, in terms of numbers that died, we have more fatality coming from infectious disease epidemics rather than through wars. Like pests that broke out in 1350 took 1/3 of the European population. And with that, feudalism crumbled and resulting in various social changes. And what changes occurred is that as that were no longer small farmers, you could no longer mass produce the farming goods. And one of the characters used for the printing books were in the past created manually. But that could no longer be possible because there was no manpower. So metal metal characters inevitably needs to be developed. And then in 1526, there was smallpox outbreak, and that 160 Spanish soldiers that came to the Americas transmitted smallpox and took out about 90% of the American population. And in Europe, commercial industries really grew, and these commercial industries also result in science advancements. Spanish flu broke out in 1918, and this was during the First or Second World War. And with war, as you know, war drives advancements of science and technology, as you know. Now COVID-19, this we are currently undergoing, and this actually is facilitating advancement of online or virtual culture, where you don't have to see face to face, and that results in also growth in metaverse. So pandemic not only kills people but also at the same time drives advancements in science technology. I will try to hurry up. Now VR, there are VR, MR, and XR. Basic concept, I believe you're familiar, but some may confuse XR with others. And VR is virtual reality, AR is augmented reality. So the content of the real world is overlaid, and MR is content world and real world objects interaction occurred. So what is XR? Some use XR and MR interchangeably, but XR is just a concept, that kind of umbrella concept of VR, AR, and MR. And then there is continuum, and AR, VR talked about, and real world and virtual world. If you put that in the right and left, then what I try to explain with this graph is what is MNS and what is digital twin and what is CPS, cyber physical system, and what is metaverse. I want to explain to you about the concepts. Now, MNS creates mathematical model of a natural phenomenon and gives hypothesis and runs simulation. And this simulation results is now real time, but it's analyzed, and that is modeling MNS, modeling and simulation. And digital twin is the real world various variety IO sensors captures data, and that is transferred to the virtual world. Then, like in the real world, if there is some manipulation, then in the virtual world, the same manipulation happens. And what is different between digital and CPS is the concept is the same, but for CPS, in virtual world to real world, you bring actuator to give feedback. So what moves in the virtual world, it changes the real world. But digital twin does not go up to that area. And metaverse is, the CPS has the largest spectrum, but metaverse has a bigger spectrum, like blockchain and other things that is used, NFT that's used in the metaverse is also in there. So metaverse connect real and virtual worlds on a real time, and through virtual tunneling. So the real world goes to the virtual world and vice versa. And through such movement, events happens on a real time. And to make that happen, you need UI. And although it's not yet realized, but it's coming soon, Web 3.0 will be needed, because all these technologies is needed to make the metaverse a reality. Now, the concept of metaverse, you probably are familiar. Meta, it's a combined word between meta and universe. And this, strictly speaking, it means my avatar on my behalf in the virtual world takes actions or moves. So copy of me is needed, and that copy is avatar. So in virtual world, avatar needs to move for metaverse to exist. So this is a bit slightly different from virtual reality, and also a bit different from augmented reality. You need avatar because in metaverse. And the technologies that make up metaverse, there are many. like AR, VR, MR are already talked about, 3D, SLAM, 5G, NFT, AI, and others. All these technologies all needs to come together to set up a metaverse. And to make metaverse, that many technologies are needed. And I cannot explain everything, but let me choose few because of time constraint to explain to you. First, we have what's called cross reality. That's the word that I coined. So on the AR side, you have local worker that works on site with a helmet on. So in case of power station, there are many accidents. So on that there, and he actually works, and VR is a supervisor. So supervisor and local worker communicates with each other, and local worker is using AR, and here she's using VR. And in space A, in the local worker space, there might be two users, but for user C, it has augmented reality glasses, and on the space B, on the supervisor side, user A and user B would be visible in the through virtual reality world. So what happens is that if there is a problem in A, then that standard video conferencing up there, they send you the streaming information. The video is streamed to the supervisor. Then looking at that video, supervisor finds out he doesn't know how to operate this, so can command like turn the knob left or right, and through that there is a collaboration between AR and VR, and we call this cross reality. And cross reality is a bit different from expanded reality or XR that was in the previous slide. Then let's talk about spatial computing. Now, when we talk about computing, it's about data logic, whether there is a rule or not. Based on some logic, data is processed, and that's what we call computing. So what is spatial computing is that map data and various attributes, in other words, information in the map are processed together. So for example, if you have a map, then there could be layers, and transportation classification, disaster classification, weather classification, all this information are also processed together, and that's why it's called spatial computing. And where it's used is it's utilized in the metaverse as is. So this spatial computing in metaverse is very important element, and this is the project that I'm currently doing. I'm working with the Ministry of Land and Transportation, and at the ministry, they generate map data, or we also have free world. They get data from there, or from social media they get data, or from National Geography Information Center we obtain data, but they are all in different formats. Interfaces are also different, and we collect them as a big data, and after they are gathered, we run the engine to convert the format, extract data for reorganization, and through this simulation, through OpenAI, it goes to the user, and user, based on the data he or she had obtained, does simulation to create and uses to create content for metaverse. And this is the project that we are currently doing. And in the things that we are looking at now, for example, in case of buildings or this type of object, the details, information, like transforming the shape of the building, making the square building into circle building, or doing some editing by adding or deleting information. That is all now possible. So convenient features are now all available so that the metaverse can be used. And another thing is that weather information or POI, point of interest information, can be entered. So AR, VR through HMV, such weather information could also be added. Then about SLAM, and this is very important concept in metaverse. This stands for Simultaneous Localization and Mapping. So it's about tracking the location and creating map at the same time. So you might think, would that be possible? Like on the subway, you are going for first time station and you take the exit and you don't know where it is. So you try to find a landmark to gauge where you are. Then you look at your map and you see the orientation of direction, and that is actually detected by robots. And simultaneously, location identification and mapping, map development is done same time. You might think this might be a chicken or egg question, but anyway, this technology is very important. And Perseverance is now in Mars, and their SLAM technology is also used. So because it's unknown world, it does not know where it is and does not have the map information around it, no information at all. But Perseverance in Mars creates the map and also identifies its own location using the SLAM technology. So how is the SLAM set up? It has many sensors to begin with. And from those sensors, it obtains data, and then through pre-processing, through feature extraction, and data is processed, and the processed data is given to the back-end side, and in the back-end, map is created. And what is important here is that it's a loop closer feedback. So while creating maps, there could be errors, and sometimes map is not created properly. So let me explain about that a bit later. Now, SLAM, it's a key in industry technology, so it's really researched a lot. So this is my classifications, and I don't know whether this correct classification is correct, but it's really researched a lot because it's a key technology. Now, if I may introduce two of those technologies, we have common filter-based SLAM, and this one is where it sort of gives a standard distribution of location of the object. So probability of me here, if it's high, the curve peaks. And on the first graph, when it starts, it knows where it is exactly. The small dot indicates that, and there is that distribution is at the peak where, in terms of location, but once it moves, there could be error because sensor is not perfect. So I moved here, and whether I'm there, but I'm leaning toward left or right, it does know. So it just shows probability. Then the sharpness of the curve becomes smaller, and from the yellow dot, you identify where you are exactly. So if you filter that through color filter, then you get more updated, more accurate information. And this is how the location is identified, and we call this common filter. Another thing is graph based. So it consists of nodes and edges, and this node when it moved from T1 to T2, then it moved to T2, but there is a error because of these sensors, and it confuses that it's in this gray area and moves again. The error becomes bigger, and then now I have gone through the corridor and square route, but it says it has gone circle route. So to correct that, you use loop closure. So you intentionally once goes again to the route that you have already passed. That reduces error and results in corrections. So like this, the dots, you see the yellow, and that's a bit round, but that yellow dot, we think there could be error. So to the first dot, you do overlay and crosses. Then you find out that actually my route was not round but square. And this is very important in SLAM. Without this, robot SLAM technology cannot be used. Like robot vacuum cleaner would not be possible. And Tesla did this. The rider sends and receives lasers and created point cloud. And from point cloud, it creates 3D images. But rider is very expensive, and at Tesla, it uses this approach. Using stereo camera, left image and right image were used to, and then this disparity was leveraged to create 3D depth. And from there, based on the 3D depth information, it's not end there. It again creates the point cloud. Then it becomes rider again. And if you follow the rider process, the problem here is that the accuracy is not that great compared to rider. And what happens then is that Tesla does various tests and results in various accidents, but they don't disclose what happened. But we can speculate. Maybe it's because of this. That's our speculation. Then in metaverse and reality world, to go between them, you need immersive UI, and Web 3.0 is also needed. And Web 3.0 is very important. The Berners-Lee is the one that created concept for Web 3.0, and the web that we now use, Web 1.0 and 2.0, are the green and blue areas, but that dark blue on top has not become reality yet. We need that for us to use Web 3.0, but with the current technology it's not possible, and there is not much of definitions that's been complete. but 3D spatial layer was created by semantics, and in 3D area like metaverse and virtual reality, people can do activities, and they create that type of internet. So that's now possible, but beyond that, it's still to be defined. And all this needs to be defined for truly metaverse world to exist. Now, if I may brief talk about the power stations with KEPCO, we scanned transformer station information, and you could say this is metaverse or this could be AR, whatever you call you, but we signed an MOU and did this project. So we scanned the exterior of the building, first floor, as well as the second floor exterior building were scanned. This was scanned information, but you can say we use SLAM technology. So inside of the building, this is actual power facilities. This is for transformer utilities, and through scanning we could do this type of 3D modeling, and that one was created as is very accurately, and that ended up, and this type of images. So at the central control center, we monitor using this image. So if there is heat, red comes up and alert is sounded. And this one, you could say, is kind of metaverse. So metaverse can not only be used in entertainment and educations, but not only for graduation ceremonies or some type of event. It's also being used like this in power industry and other industries. So this is that concludes my presentation. Did I finish earlier than my time? So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. If not, I will conclude here. Thank you very much.
이번 시간에는
The next presenter will talk about new renewable energy technology trends for energy conversion in the era of decarbonization. Professor Kim Si-hyun from Anang University will make the presentation.
예, 안녕하십니까
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Si-hyun. So I'm here at the robot exhibition, and what is on display are mostly things that use energy. And the previous speaker talked about energy efficiency. And I have been given the topic of new and renewable energy in robots. So since this is a robot exhibition, rather than focusing a lot on new and renewable energy, and no, this is the content of my presentation. So what is new and renewable energy, robotics in the new and renewable energy, and etc. And one person talked about energy efficiency, and in the era of decarbonization, I will also be talking about that as well. And there are many technologies involved. And what are some of the technologies that are effective? And I will be touching upon that as well. And this is what you know already. So in order to respond to climate change, we are making a lot of efforts. So let me just jump over the slides using the pictures. You've probably seen this picture already. And in order to reduce emissions, what do we need to do? So in order to limit the temperature rise, we have to do a lot of efforts, make a lot of efforts. And these are the expected scenarios. So when we make this much of effort and we would reduce this much of emission, and then we can live, we will try to avoid not to leave this kind of earth to our next generation. So there are many climate issues, no fires. No, we do not have that much fires in Korea, but we do feel heat waves, and there are also typhoons that we experienced in Korea. So globally, many countries are trying efforts with regard to carbon neutrality, and they are trying to reduce emissions. And this is quite interesting. So it's the color chart, and this has 10 major countries in there. So it shows how much CO2 we should reduce. So China accounts for 1/4. So production side, China has a lion's share. So black and white part is Korea is there. We are ranked 11th. So if you see this, so if China reduces this much, Korea can reach our goal. We have to understand this chart here. So not only Korea should make an effort, but depending upon what China does and what the US does, it will have a significant impact on the global decarbonization efforts. So people are engaging in the race to net zero. Korea has proclaimed neutrality, carbon neutrality by 2050. And Sweden by 2045 will achieve net zero. And Korea's target year is 2050. And as you can see, the years indicated and the target for each country. So why do we need to reduce carbon emissions? You probably know this very well, so I will skip over this slide. So there are many systems and policies that came out. In the case of Korea, we have proclaimed Green New Deal policies. And please refer to this later on. And among the major index, there is the Energy Trilemma Index. Not many people know this. And there are 3 pillars here. First is energy security. So when we talk about energy security, what about Korea in this context? If we stopped importing oil, what would happen? A very serious situation will occur. So that is related to energy security. Next is energy equity. The user is energy supply, is it fairly provided to users? We are quite right in that area. And next is environmental sustainability. So in that sense, using this Trilemma Index, countries are ranked. This is Korea is ranked 35th or 31st. Korea's Energy Trilemma Index is 35th. We talk about G7 and G10 and Korea entering that top group. Still, in this era, Korea is ranked quite low in the Energy Trilemma Index. In 2020, we became 35th, and we have climbed a little, and we are 31st, but we are not with it. We're still 30s, ranked 30s and more. With regard to new and renewable energy, we need to think a lot about this. So people say it's new and renewable energy or non-new renewable energy. And non-renewable energy is nuclear energy and thermal. So these are the new and renewable energy, photovoltaic, hydro, and etc. Among this, now let me briefly introduce the most widely used. This is PV. So you've seen these modules a lot, and there will be a lot more of these later on. So using PV curtains, and now these are used for construction and canopies and etc. And this is quite expensive, and there's a lot of research done on this side as well. And buildings, applied to buildings, and even on the floor, PV panels can be set up. And next is solar thermal generation. So in terms of altitude, Korea is not an appropriate country for solar thermal generation. But if we use a good technology, that could be possible. We have one in Daegu City, but that's not, the size is not that big. And this is the topic of discussion today. So this is hydrogen society. So if you look at this picture, there are hydrogen is very close to our lives. If you look at the U.S. roadmap, now this is similar to what other countries are following. So in our society, hydrogen is reflected deeply in there. In terms, it's used as fuels as well for robots. In the new and renewable energy, there are various types. And today, I would like to look at something quite different, and that is hydrothermal. And hydrothermal energy is the last to come into the new and renewable energy category. It started quite late. But what's interesting here is that in case of Europe and Japan, it became utilized as a renewable energy 40 years ago already. So let me look at this side. So this is a robot conference, so I brought something that's quite relevant. So robotics in the new and renewable energy. So initially, in terms of PV panels, the renewable energy was used for fuels for operating robots. But now robots are used for analyzing the production of renewable energy. So I've seen some drones that are on exhibit outside. So using drones to maintain wind turbines. So if the turbines or wings are not frozen, now you can use drones to defrost it or check if it is in good order. So this is a model for PV. So you can use robots to check the productivity of the PV modules. So robots can be used for designing the solar farms. So since Korea has a very small land size, we are applying solar farms on mountains. But I don't think that is appropriate. So if possible, we should use rooftops for solar energy. Or possibly use set up solar farms on lands that are not used. The robots apply to offshore wind. So it would go up the wind turbines and do things that people cannot physically do. So there are onshore wind farms, but also, but it is not ideal. Korea is not ideal for onshore wind farms, and they say offshore wind farm is more appropriate. So if you set up an offshore wind farm, offshore, if you send people out there to manage it, it will be quite difficult. So you can use the robots to manage the offshore wind farms. So dams. In case of hydropower, so small hydropower was new and renewable energy, and large scale hydropower also became a part of new and renewable energy. So some of you may have visited dams, and if the water runs off the dam, it becomes dangerous. So we could apply robotic technology to observe the situation. So you can also take photos or pictures above the dam or underwater. So you can use the drones or robots for that purpose. Then the market right now, what is the situation of the new and renewable energy market? This is K-Cloud Park or Hydrothermal Cluster Park, that the project that I'm taking part in. The Soyang River water, in the deep water, the solar power cannot go through that. So temperature is about 4 to 7 degrees. So using this, you can cool the data center. And also using the water from here, smart farms and the cooling of the hinterland can be possible. And also, at the data center, if you set up a data center, you have to, if you set it up, new and renewable energy should be used. So this can also be utilized in that sense. Another thing is the fourth generation district heating. We are conducting research on fifth generation, and the providers for district heating are still operating the first generation. So not really fast in terms of R&D. So steam would be created and provided to the user and sent to the conveyor pipe, and the steam has to be lower if it goes in the pipe to 40 degrees, and that is the first generation district heating. And if that happened, this requires a lot of energy, 60-degree energy, and 120 degrees would require a significant energy for conversion. But what's interesting is that if you convey it to the target area, you need to run another machine to adjust the temperature. So this is a lot of waste of energy. So using the underwater and different water sources, and you would use the exchanger, and using the heat pump, you can send the water to the conveyor pipe directly at 60 to 65 degrees. And the heater is 0.7, and gas cannot exceed 0.9. And this water heat energy, using the current technology, depending upon the heat source, you can produce up to 20 times the energy. So excluding the seawater, you can go up to 7 times. So if one energy goes in, 7 times the energy can come out. So this heating is possible, and then if you recover 45 degrees and etc., that means that you can reduce this amount of energy, and then cooling is also possible. So cooling and heating both is possible with this machine. And as far there was a lot of research done on the geothermal energy, hydrothermal energy, and this has become within the category of renewable energy. And we have some people from the generation plant, and only two types of water source are used. And in the future, we need to change the law so that different types of water sources can be used. So this is hydrothermal. So how that happens, and there are different types of water, but the technology is the same. So the characteristics of the water source is only different. So using the heat of the water, and you would use the exchanger and use the heat pump, provide any types of heat, whether it's cooling for cooling or heating. So using the difference in the air temperature. If you take the case of sewage in Japan, so the seasons are changing right now, and in the middle of the winter, the sewage temperature is quite high because many people use a lot of hot water, and in the winter you need no heating, and sewage temperature is high, and you can use that temperature difference. What about the summer? So outside temperature is quite high, 30 degrees and etc. But the sewage is underwater, under the surface, so temperature is quite low. So you can use that temperature for cooling. So that is why you can do heating and cooling for both. And this is a calculation. And this is the use of sewage. And using sewage, and if you can provide cooling to 2.5 million households. But that is not possible right now. And many are trying to make this possible. There are many technologies can be leveraged. And somebody called me this morning, and they said that they would like to install one of these technologies in a certain location. There could be many types. They're not only using sewage, but also water source, tap water, and other water can be used. And these technologies that are provided in the table are shown on this slide in picture. And I could go on and on about it. But my time here is limited, so it's quite unfortunate that I cannot go into detail. So using these technologies, we can utilize the energy. So this is case of Japan. So Japan and Korea is similar. No, because we're advancing these technologies. Of course, we were late in setting up the sewage pipes, and it's made of concrete, and it's quite old. So if it becomes old, what do you do? They say that it's regeneration. No, you have to do regeneration. So in the process of regenerating the sewage pipes, we installed heat exchangers there, and using this, we do cooling and heating. And we talk about what's happening in Japan, but in terms of this technology, we are about 40 years behind Japan. And Tokyo Urban Gas Corporation has set this up in the pipes and already providing cooling and heating. But what about Korea? We have been talking about whether this is new and renewable energy or not, only a discussion. And that is quite frustrating. And I do feel that this situation will improve soon. The core technology here is heat pump. And what is that? So the more energy you have, to put it simply, let's say you have 1,000 tons of water, and if you take out 1 degree of heat, you would send it this way, and that is just a simple explanation. So we're using compressors or condensers and expansion valves, and you would use that and adjust the temperatures up and down. So we have a heat pump here as well, and that is what you see on the top. So using the air, the warm air is sent. It's air heat pump. So using the air as a medium for heat. But if you change the medium as water, you could use water temperature for that. So compared to air, What's important is that in the winter, when it's cold, you have to do heating. What if you use air, but air is cold, so that means there is less energy efficiency. To the contrary, you need to produce energy. So you have to use a lot of other electricity energy. But what about the opposite? No, that applies for cooling in the winter. So if you compare all those things, hydrothermal is quite a very good energy. Among the many cases, so this is the first time that has been applied to a building. In the river pipe, conveyor pipe, we set up about heat exchangers on the bottom of the floor of the building, first and second, and to heat and cool first and second floor of this building. The building was completed in 2009. I asked about this facility in the district office, but no one really knew about it. And since they set up this equipment, but no one was maintaining it, so they have to remove it. That's quite unfortunate. No, you used a lot of money to install this equipment, but no one is maintaining it, so no use. So uh, so high voltage electricity would be sent through a underground cable, and KT has a similar thing like that. So this is underground. No, there is underground water, and if it's cold, we would do heating, and you can use this water for heating and cooling. And KT is this is a KT branch. So in order to heat and cool this building, the energy is too small because KT uses a lot of energy, 2 trillion won per year. But if you use hydrothermal, you can save a significant amount of money. And the electricity used a lot by the data center. So you can reduce the use of the electricity used there by using the underwater ground heating and cooling system. And building here uses a lot of energy here. And what is that? And these are similar to the airports and etc. And the buildings that uses a lot of heating and cooling, meaning the hypermarkets, they open very early in the morning and close very late. So these buildings use a lot of energy. What's interesting is that near the telephone or KT branch, there are hypermarts nearby. And also, if you pull down the wall, their machine room is connected. We wanted to try it on a pilot basis, but the management of that hypermart refused. But that is still possible now. If you convince the management, that could be possible, and it will lead to a lot of saving of money. This is the Water Regeneration Center, and the Water Regeneration Center is a part of the Water Regeneration Corporation. At the Tancheon Water Regeneration Center, the heat is generated and is sold to the Korea District Heating Corporation. Right now, heating is sold, but cooling is possible as well. And the heating corporation does not get involved in the cooling a lot. So if that is possible, regulation is possible. We can do other things here as well. So if there's deregulation, cooling would be possible as well. I think you've been here already. This is the tallest building in Korea, 123 floors. No, the heating and cooling is about 3,000 RT. A lot of water sources used for energy. The raw water is the water that goes from the collection tank to the treatment area, and that water is used for heating and cooling. And this is the sea. If you go to Samcheok, there is a Seoul Beach Hotel Resort. Here, seawater is used only for heating, unfortunately, because all hotel rooms have air conditioners installed. So only heating is done. And the recovery period is payback period about 6 years. And if cooling was used as well, this payback period could be shortened. So in any building here, boiler plus cooler, and it's an absorbent type, and it is using gas. So by applying this, gas is not used anymore. So gas could be removed 100%, but they are using heat pumps, and heat pumps use electricity. So it takes about only 35% of the energy generated from the plant can go to the final usage site. So if you consider that and do a re-engineering, you could say that 30% of the energy has been reduced and saved. My time is nearly up. So this is Eco Delta City in Busan. They use different types of water heat for different purposes. So this is something that is not possible to do by one entity. So K-Water is very active in this area. K-Water has a lot of water, and that is the focal point of its business. So K-Water should not only maintain the water, but also should engage in other businesses as well. And it's taking an initiative. And these are the pilot facilities: Hanwil Flood Control Center and Hanwil Water Environment Research Institute. And also at hospitals, Samsung Seoul Hospitals and Asan Hospital, and etc., where there are pipes, water pipes, or conveyor pipes. And in Samsung, there are complex transfer centers in Samsung area, and there are also commercial areas, and the heating and cooling could be a possibility there. And in Gwangmyeong and Siheung industrial complex, the heating could be possible. So we're just starting these projects. So what about other countries? There are a lot of projects that has been pursued, and the different types of water are used. Seawater, sewage, or underground water are already been used since 40 years ago. So China, no, they were behind us, but in 2018, they applied the heating and cooling in the Olympics complex. So Canada, this is the event where Kim Yona won the gold medal. So actually, they are using a different technology here because it's been remodeled. So this kind of technology is called the neighborhood energy. It's very close by. You don't have to bring it from somewhere. In the energy Trilemma index, there was energy security part. So we import 95% of the petroleum used. So they said, no, we do have 1% of gas produced and 1% of petroleum produced, but that's not much. So where do we use energy that is far away? But in Canada, they use energy that is very close by, and that is the neighborhood energy. So Japan. No, people who are middle-aged know the Walkman of Sony, and Sony, since 40 years ago, adopted heating and cooling system using water. And this is another case in Canada. So looking this, we need to promote more hydrothermal in Korea as well. Thank you. No questions?
예, 다음 순서는 한국중부발전 김치호 차장님.
Next, we will hear from Senior Manager of the Korean Midland Power Corporation, and he's going to talk about Esg Management achievement with robot technology.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Hello, I am Kim Chiho from Korea Midland Power Company. Now, in the previous presentation, using fourth technology, increase energy efficiency to find balance between supply and demand of the energy in Korea, and I fully agree of that importance. And today I'm going to talk about how to save energy through more efficient usage of power systems. Now, Korea Midland Power Company has one of the first power company to use robot technology, and I believe that's why I was invited as speaker today. And in applying the robot technology in various industries, I will talk about how that is linked to achieving ESG management, which is also another hot topic of these days. Now, up to now, thermal power generation, mostly coal was used, and the image of the coal power generation is not very good. This is because as the coal is used for the fuel, of course, recently with the CO2 emission or the microdust emission are more recent phenomena. But before that, the dust issue of coal, and because of its dark color, in terms of environmental pollutions, it had very negative image. So the environmental pollution from thermal power generation was mostly the pollutant released into the air, like CO, NOs, and added to that now microdust. And by crushing the coal, it used as fuel, so the particles of that crushed coal could also be released. So we tried to look the power stations, power plants as clean as possible aesthetically, using colorful paints. But again, it's true that there's a lot of pollutants. So it's very dirty inside, and it's very tough conditions. So many regard as working thermal power plant as one of those 3D labors, and thermal power plant was even introduced in one of those TV programs that introduces extreme jobs, jobs working in extreme conditions. Now, to make environment friendly and safer, these thermal power plants, various activities are being carried out these days. But these thermal power plants basically are using the principle that has existed for more than 1 century. So fundamental changes, in other words, is not very possible. So Rankine cycle and thermodynamics and Faraday's laws and others things are needed to operate thermal power plants. So even if it's focuses on cleanness and try to adopt very environment friendly facilities, but the workers, what they do cannot be fundamentally changed. But it's still true that a lot of investments are made to make it more environment friendly. So the pollutant that goes into the air has been cut to 1/10 from the past, and even interior, a lot of changes have happened. Now, for example, conveyor belts in moving the coals, it's not done outdoors, it's done indoors. And even in that conveyor belt section, there were some particles that seeped out through the windows, are subject to regulation and control by the government, and they challenge us to improve. So we made investment in that area also to make it environment friendly. And again, it has become cleaner working environment, and hence improving the working conditions. But today, I'm not. The worker here is still black. Because what workers do are still the same, because main facilities here are still boiler, turbine, and power generators. So the fundamental facilities are still the same. So there is constraints in making improvement. So in terms of the safety risk, it's still very much current. Now, this is the most recent thermal power plant that we built. And the biggest change compared to the past plant is that we now have indoor coal yard where we store the coals, and it's hundreds of meters. So it's really big area, and it has now all become indoors. So nothing, no particles seeps out. Coals that come from other countries, they were kind of crushed and made it small. And it's a western coast, so it's very windy, and the coal flew to nearby villages, making everything very black. But now that can be prevented. Of course, to make the indoor yard, really big investment was needed. But for us, environment comes first. Hence, we made these efforts. And another thing we continuously did is that we focused on making the power generation have no NOx or COX. So we reduce such emissions by 1/10 compared to the past. And we have a better electric related better electric precipitators. So boiler and turbines also have become more efficient and uses latest edge technologies. And thanks to such efforts, 200 megawatt thermal power plant, which was first introduced in early 80s in Korea. At that time, efficiency was about 35%, but now for this latest plant, it's more than 45%. So more than 10% of increase in efficiency have been achieved. But in the ranking cycles, due to its basic structure, uh, making efficiency close to 50% is impossible. So 44% and 45% will be the optimal level of performance that we can achieve now. Another thing is that, this is the courtyard that I talked about. On the left side, you see it's exposed to the outdoor air. So if it's really windy and if there is a typhoon, then coals, yes, fly to nearby villages. And those days, when we go to work, um, from the entrance of our complex or campus, our shoes get dirty. So, but it's now indoor yard, so it looks cleaner. But again, with this making going indoors, there is a lot of difficulties inside. So you cannot kill two rabbits with one stone. But I hope that you will appreciate the amount of effort that we are making. So from ESG perspective, what I want to talk about, which ESG is my key topic today. So how can you use robots for ESG management would be what I want to share with you. So not environment, but this is more focused on the social aspect. So respect for human, think about safety. So create workplace that is more human-centric. And how can we achieve that? Up to now, our efforts have been focused on a lot of regulations and control, but within our company we also put priority in making our workers safe, and that is also helpful in terms of improving our corporate image. So creating environment where it's safer and more comfortable for workers to work, and that's the efforts that we have made. One of those efforts is that we now have motor-operated valves. When you run or stop a power plant, a lot of different, things needs to be adjusted within the plant. And it includes valves, which workers need to go around the plant to shut them down or open that up again. But now, because it has become kind of automated, it has become more accurate and less worker time investment. And instead of rather now we use boiler system scaffold. Now in some countries, if there is a boiler issue, without using scaffold, they just use ropes to do the work in some developing countries. But now we use scaffold, and it's not even generic scaffold. We have system scaffold that is more stronger and more effective scaffold. And by rules, you need scaffold to work. Without scaffold, you cannot do any boiler work. So, falling from a boiler is now intrinsically impossible. This is how much we are focused on, safety. So we had made this type of efforts up to now. So as we are focused this on safety, but we are still hearing about workers' accidents on the news. It's because some things are really unpredictable. We try a lot of things to prevent the accident recurring again. But if you push one down, another thing pops up unexpectedly in some other areas. So if it can predict, then you can use some means to improve safety, and that is the only way to reduce accident. But sometimes that is not really possible. So in the future, what we should do, I think the only answer is to use more robots. So at our company, to create the value through ESG management, we use robots at our sites. But robots customized in power plants do not exist, because at power plants, it's not really big customers, and because we are more like a supplier of the electricity and power, so the robot industry do not look at us as a very attractive customers. So what we do now is the robot technology that is in the venture startups. We try to converge that with the need of the power plant so that they can be used at our sites. So using the robots in the power plants happened also in the past. As you see from these photos, on the left side, it's from 86, Chernobyl, the accident. So around the power plants, the radioactive pollutants were removed by people. There were machines that for removal, but it was not very powerful in terms of operation. So it was manually done, which was kind of very sad situation. But on the right side, we had the same situation in the Fukushima leakage, and there we were able to use robots for removing the pollutants. If we had robots in Chernobyl, there would not have been that many human sacrifices. But in Japan, they created this because they needed this, and rather than the other business seeing the needs to make money and creating robots, it's more like the power plant industry itself seeing the need and developing something to be used within our industry. So removal is not perfect, because to remove you need some power for the robots to move freely, and the rather than the function that we need in the robotics industry, the operator or the vehicle, that brings these robots in the right location is, so infrastructure is not there. So bring the robots there, take it out, and bring to its exact location is still a bit burdensome. Then at plants, what important role does robots play? Now, basically, when we talk about robot roles, it's about replacing hazardous works, so in placing people, and that could be very simple definitions. But from the perspective of the ESG value, robots' value in ESG is not about replacing people, because that only reduces value of human workers. Robots need to be utilized to increase the value of humans for it to be valuable in terms of ESG. So robots again needs to make human more valuable. So in step with that, our company is renovating with robots, and we are going through 3 steps to achieve that. Currently, we are still at step 1, and at the power plants, using the current robot technologies, we are doing a lot of research where the current robot technology can be applied in the current power plant site. So we are cooperating with the Korea Association of Robot Industry for that efforts. And we will have a robot challenge tomorrow at this exhibition where power plants, the robot concept for that can be used for the power plants can be introduced. And step 2 will be introducing robots, many of them where they are needed at the power plant. This is the way to increase the importance of robots, and this will mean motivate site workers to use more robots. So all workers needs to get used to working with robots, and that's where we are currently focused on. The last step was it will be after such steps, once the robot performance becomes really better and robots really plays important role in power plants. And how they play important role, I'll talk about a bit later. Now, at the RBIT challenge, we Comico participated in that challenge, and we under the we did 30 projects related to convergence of robots and power plants, and currently they are being commercialized. Two are still in the R&D phase. And through field tests, we apply at the power plant site, and they are actually currently being used. And tomorrow's challenge will be that will be upgraded from the last year's convergence project. So it's about diagnostics mission. So using robot model for diagnosing the safety of power plants, and we will see what kind of project entered the challenge competition. Then let's talk about the achievement of last year. This is duct cleaning robots. So if there are a lot of dust in the duct, it could result in fire. So people going in to do cleaning, so it was kind of 3D works. Now it can be done through robots. And we also have worker cooperation robot. If there's accident, the initial response is always important, because on the news, if there is an accident, some did that, and then they call ambulance and go to a hospital, but he ended up dying on the hospital, which is really frustrating. So if there is an accident, you need to have a quick response. And if you miss that so-called golden time, you might end up dead. So to avoid that, we have worker cooperations robot. So it's not only helping workers from the safety perspective, but the workers that working by himself, assist them, and give them the needed tools for each steps, and also give them safety items to apply to be used for the steps. And this place is to cool down the power plants. We use a lot of seawater, and if you use a lot of seawater, the waste from the seawater also comes in, and that could actually block the seawater intake pump. So regularly the divers goes down to remove various dredge that blocks the pump by hand. But in the power plants, there are many power generators and plants, and they take turns for maintenance, and there are many pumps, and y- th- therefore, even if there is a blockage, some unit still needs to be in operation, increasing the safety risks. So we introduced robots for taking the dredge out. And this one, it's not been introduced yet, but the concept's ready. It's a coal conveyor belt, and here, unfortunately, a worker working in dawn um, had a fatal accident. So to prevent such accident from recurring, uh, you know, monitoring the safety situation, sending alerts when need be, was created. So a worker at conveyor belt does something unstable, or it's not using the right safety gear, or if there's a hazardous situation nearby, then the robot makes a decision to prevent that turning into fatal situation. And this one, there are different types of boilers used at the power plants, and to help the boilers be inspected quickly and more efficiently, we create these robots that goes up the boilers. So the boilers are very hot, and if there's a destruction in the boiler, there's a really strong hydro pressure, and that could result in accidents. So in this hot and very high pressure environment, RoboGo is the first one to go into the inspection and bring us the information. So this will be, this is again still at the concept stage. We also have, this one is in Seoul, near Han River. So where the water flows in from Han River, there's a lot of floating particles, including plastics. So we use people to remove them, but maybe we could use now robots to remove them. And this is currently jointly being researched for epidemics preventions. And I talked about using coals, which might fly around in particles and small pieces in the plant, and then all needs to be removed. So for that hazardous situation, we are thinking about wearable robots. And step two is this: for each area, different robots are being used, and they cannot all move freely or have AI. So we have robot control center where all the robots are controlled centrally. And third, last step is, I do believe there are three things. Now we talked about cooperation robot. So robot becomes your co-worker or supporter. So working lonely in early morning, they become your supporter and friend. And if there is an accident, ensures quick response and helps the workers work more comfortably. And you could also have a chat with the robot, and maybe get a coffee from a robot. And assistant will be the ultimate role, in my opinion, of robots. So at the control tower of power plants, robot could have a supercomputer functions and improve the systems, and even suggest will be the better, safer, and more efficient way of operating the power plant and tell that to our colleagues. So they don't do such adjustment themselves, but tell the colleagues what to do, set the direction so that the power plant can be run at the optimum level. And that would be from the ESG perspective, ultimate value of robots and the plant side. So this I really talked about. So lastly, in terms of becoming assistants, offer the optimum guidelines and guides to everyone. This would be our ultimate goal of developing robots. So these are two types of robots that was introduced in films. You have TAS from Interstellar, and you also have surrogate robot. So, in my opinion, the ultimate robot will be the interstellar robot. It's not about replacing human, but coexist with human and help human to find do work more efficiently and to set the better direction for human and save human from falling in danger, help humans make less mistakes. Surrogate is only replacing human and makes humans marginalized. So I think for ESG perspective, the robots from Interstellar will be the answer. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
So we are at the last presentation for today. Park Yong-sik from Energy Times News will present on legal engineering approach of advanced technology applied to the electric power industry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Young-sik Park from Energy Times News. The keyword for track 2 of this conference is Fourth Industrial Revolution, Energy and ESG. And the previous speakers went in detail about this topic. But I will give you a different approach. When these technologies are converged, and in order for these technologies to be accepted into a society, what sort of legal basis is required? I know that topic is not so easy, but the topic is about legal engineering approach of advanced technology applied to the electric power industry. So it's a combination of legal and engineering. Well, the previous speakers covered many of the details, so I will skip over some areas that have been already covered already. I will be covering four topics. First is ESG, business environment, how it will change in the fourth industrial revolution. And next, as the previous speaker mentioned, in the electric power industry, accidents may happen. So how to resolve these accident problems, and Japan, how we can use advanced technology to resolve the accidents that may arise due to human error. And next, in terms of adoption, from technology perspective, what sort of legal framework needs to be pursued? So first, ESG business environment in the fourth industrial revolution era. So innovation happened for the past 200 years. And there were some contributions made to the humanity, but there were resistance in the process. In case of the first industrial revolution, the machine had replaced what people had done, and there were Luddite movement that happened, and many people tried to destroy machines. And in the second industrial revolution, it played the role of the arm and legs of people using the electricity. And the representative here is the system of mass production and mass consumption as well. And these systems were set up. And during the second industrial revolution, the famous economist Adam Smith contributed a lot of his theories here. And in terms of management, the Frederick Taylor, the creator of Taylor system. So in the second industrial revolution, mass production happened, and it resulted in mass pollution. And there's a lot of products made, and the issues related to consumers arise. And thus far, the producer had a upper hand. So the concept of consumer protection did not exist during that time. And a lot of products were produced, and there were a lot of damages on the part of the consumers as well. And in the third industrial revolution, during this time, semiconductor was developed, and electronic and computer resulted in the information revolution. And globalization happened. And in the process, and neoliberalism appeared, and social division happened. And recently, in the 21st century, the concept of fourth industrial revolution emerged. And as the previous speakers mentioned, technologies in the fourth industrial revolution, what is the starting point and the end point? No, we cannot distinguish that. It's very difficult to do that. And the IT companies are changing, transforming into a platform companies. And on the other hand, these technologies are being converged, and in the process, there are ultra-connected society and industry. And we don't know what will happen in the future. And the future is just saying that the result of the fourth industrial revolution, will that benefit human race, or will it lead to extinction of the humankind? So there are a lot of discussions centering on this. And if the fifth industrial revolution happened, that is related to specific technologies, meaning that robots will overtake or become better than human beings. And some people say that this will be the fifth industrial revolution. With regard to this, so in terms of ESG, there are some business environment that has happened. And ESG is a acronym of environment, social, and corporate governance. So values in these three areas are aiming to be strengthened. And since 20 years ago, CSR, social corporate responsibility concept has emerged. But in case of the existing CSR, corporate were demanded of this, and companies did not know what is the benefit. In order to achieve sustainable development, what is the role of CSR? So in the process, many felt that there were limitations. And recently, people are saying that let's be more compact. In order for corporates to be more sustainably to achieve sustainable growth, let's collect the important points for sustainable growth, and then the value of ESG came out. So what I'm going to talk about from now on is within the ESG, the energy side. The keyword in track 2 is energy. So I will talk about energy, and as the previous speaker right before me said, in order to pursue energy, no accidents have to happen. So in terms of society, we look at that as human rights. So the safety, the social value, we look at this as a human rights, and we want to review this from that perspective. In order to pursue safety, the existing energy industry, how to utilize the technology innovation, we need to look at it from that perspective. The second part is about the accident that happened in Japan's electric power industry. There are many cases, so due to time constraints, I will only introduce a few. There are 4 types of accident: type A, type B, type C, type D. So there are 4 types. In case of type A, it is a situation where if you do work where the electricity is transmitted, that is type A. And type B is where there is outage, but there is there's accident because of the arc. And type C is after the maintenance, the accident that happens after the maintenance. And type D is within the plant, outside of the plant or facility. So if we analyze this accident, everything is related to human error. Now, people made a mistake. It's not something that came naturally. In case of this case, this person didn't touch something without having gloves on. They're not newcomers. They have experience, lengthy experience, but because of they were complacent, they got into this accident. But from the power generation plant, they have to control this. So in that sense, people, we need to do something to resolve the situation. This is an arc accident case. This was related to the safety equipment or the jacket, and this is related to arc, and this is because of inappropriate working condition. This person had 40 years of experience, but still was involved in this accident. The third type, type C, is because he wasn't wearing a helmet, and there was contact with the charging unit, and was shocked and got hurt on the head. And so let's see how to resolve the situation. Japan's electronic industry adopted technology. This case is thermal power plant. Within the facility, there were control tower, but now everything is done remotely. It's based on IoT sensors. Now you can control things or monitor things remotely. So you don't need to be physically present in the plant. So you can remotely maintain or manage several plants. Now one person would be managing one plant before, but now one person can manage several plants. So there is efficiency in management. Second case is within the thermal power plant. The person would use 5 sensors, nearly 5 sensors, to find or detect the faults. But now we would use the robots to do diagnosis. So there is no subjective difference, and it's very objective using the data of the robot. So in case of high altitude facility, if people go up there, there is risk of fall, and people do not like to work there. But you need to do inspection. So alternatively, drones can be used. drones in the energy side are used very widely. The third case is hydropower plant. A professor from Hanyang University talked about this. In case of hydropower plant, no person will go in there, and if they install something, you have to stop everything, stop the operation. So during the outage, you cannot produce power. But if you use drones, you don't have to stop the operations. And while it is operation, measurement is possible. So there is efficiency in power generation if you use drones. Next, wind power. So on the blade, when there is a lightning, there would be an impact on the blade. And then later on, people have to go up there to check. But no, real time, you can send the drones there to check the condition of the blade so that there will be continuous power generation from the wind power. Last case is power transmission and distribution. And you look at the power transmission lines, and one person talked about the magpie nest. And there could be some impact or effect from the birds. And because of that, the cables, transmission cables, can become old or corroded. And you cannot check each and every one with the human eye. And in such a case, you can use a drone or install a special camera to look at the aging or the corrosion of the cable and send the relevant information to the control tower and change the cable if necessary. But thus far, the robot cannot do the actual changing of the cable itself. That thus far has to be done by the person.
일본의 사고
And in order to respond to the accidents in Japan, no technology has been developed and applied. So, talked about the acceptance or use of these implementation of these technologies. In order to implement them more, let's look at the safety-related legislation. So I brought two examples of legislation with me. The PL Act, and it was enacted about 20 years ago. And it is a law to be applied to in the second industrial revolution. And I don't know if this will be applied as is for the industry in the fourth industrial revolution. And this is being discussed. And second is a act that was introduced early this year, the Serious Disaster Penalty Act. It will be enforced within 3 months. So let me briefly introduce these two laws. And anyway, since it is in force, businesses have to be prepared for this and understand the concept. And lastly, technology innovation and ESG relations between the two in terms of technology and ethics. This is a very complex diagram. And if there's a product defect, and because of this defect, and there's a damage here or loss, basically the provider and manufacturer has to take responsibility. And there are two liabilities: contractual liability and torts liability. And there's a new concept of PL liability. And the related law here is not easy to understand. And I will explain in detail about this case in the next slide. You need to understand the concept accurately. And a product refers to a movable property manufactured or processed. And what is manufactured has a industrial characteristics and a distribution characteristics. Then that's according to Korean PL law. And the second is the scope. If you say a movable property, that is something movable and non-movable. And what's important is the immaterial thing. And immaterial thing is energy is does it apply to the PL Act? There are legal cases, so it is incorporated. It is a part of the PL Act. Next is data, information, and software. Can they be applicable under the PL Act? Maybe if the law is revised, I think there will be relevant provisions related to this. In case of software, we have case studies, cases, legal cases. Software, well, then data and information is something that you cannot see. But software itself is not really, it has to be used as a module or made into a package to be more and become a tangible thing. So in case of software, it is a part of the PL Act, and there are a lot of cases that are being raised based on this act. And what's important is data and information. And with AI, and that is related to data. And data, who takes responsibility for that, liability for that? And data can be transacted. And if you're transacting data, and what is the entity of data and who is responsible for that data, that needs to be defined as well. And the entity that is making this law is discussing this in detail. And next is the definition of defect. There are three types of defects: manufacturing defect, design defect, and instruction defect. In case of manufacturing defect, if the product is not made according to the design, no, that is an issue. For example, if an automobile, it runs well, and then suddenly the brakes is faulty, and that is a manufacturing defect. In case of design defect, that could lead to the company closing down. The design defect is default, and if that is a problem, all products that is made based upon this design defect, then you have to do a recall, and that is a lot of cost. And in the law, there is a concept of the alternative design, and this is very complex, so I will not go into detail about that. And third is instruction defect, and that is related to the warning. And with the current technology, if you cannot get rid of this defect, you have to have the warning instruction there. And if you not have preparation for this, you can be sued. And there are the pictures here, and you've probably seen this a lot, and you probably can guess what sort of accidents may happen. The children will use these chopsticks and stick it into the socket and get shocked, electric shock. And who is responsible for this? Who should be responsible for this? The chopstick maker or what have you? So I didn't really explain this before, but the person who can avoid this accident at a low cost should be responsible. Then, in that sense, the socket maker has to be responsible. So they have to respond to prevent the accident. And the second case, the designs are changing a lot. So why this case came out? In the US, the coffee cup related suits happen a lot in the US. Annually about 90,000 cases. So if there's a problem with the cup, people may get burned. So coffee cup related burns, raising suits against McDonald's and other fast food restaurants. There are many cases like that. So because of these increasing lawsuits, this kind of difference result came out. So what will happen to technology in the fourth industrial revolution? It will change in this way. You will use the data and change it into a program, and programs will be made into a package, and package will go through the manufacturing and be provided. And this autonomous cars and robots applies here, and AI fits right in. and all things that came out from the products from the fourth industrial revolution, the material objects, now fits this criteria. And I talked about the PL Act in Korea. And PL starts from the package and on. And I said that data, information, software, if the law is revised a bit, the steps previous to the package will be applied. And we have to be prepared. Who has to prepare that? The developers of or designers of advanced technology in the fourth industrial revolution. You have to be prepared for that. So please read these cases. And this is a software related cases in the autonomous car. And this is related to the cardiac defibrillators. And due to the hackers remotely manipulated the working of the defibrillators. And this is a simulation related. And this is a PL. I talked about the PL Act. And second law is the Serious Disaster Penalty Act. And in U.S., it's called a Corporate Homicide Act. And we do not want to use that terminology, so we have named it as Serious Disaster Penalty Act. And what's defined in the law is the yellow part here, and the top is the area of the Criminal Act. So we do not need to discuss that part. So to illegal act, no tort, no person was murdered, and due to negligence, person was killed. In this case of this, in case of Korea, from the year 2000, there were no movements to enact the law. But if you set up the act, it works as a very strong stress on the part of the business. So the businesses wanted to say to delay this and etc. And finally, it has been established, set up this year. In case of the UK, the law was established in 2007. And in case of Japan, they have a organization punishment which is in the Criminal Act. So if there's a human error and there's a human impact which could have been prevented or estimated and it wasn't prevented, no, you cannot leave it up to the corporation. So they want to resolve the situation by having a law. So target of the act and the person responsible. And the important part is that the person is not only responsible, but also the entity or the corporate is responsible as well. In the past, one person will be solely responsible for a big accident, but now the whole corporate is responsible, and penalty and fines will be applied. So businesses should be prepared for this. And this is statistics from the Industrial Safety Corporation. So please refer to this later on. And this is the actual case in the UK. Company A and the worker of B, no accident happened, and according to the act, 3.85 million pounds were fined due to the accident by the person going on this business. And if there's an overlap between PL Act and Serious Disaster Penalty Act, what would happen? Now, Serious Disaster Penalty Act is related to the impact on the person physically, but in case of PL, it's not. It's a liability related to not only the person's physical damage, but also the property damage. And companies need to have a very clear definition of the product, data, information, and etc. And we need to have a clear definition of defect as well, and the management of care, and obligation of care as well. And the top picture is related to the serious industrial accident, and what's on the bottom is a serious impact or damage to the citizens. And that applies to the Serious Disaster Penalty Act. And this is the damage by drone. And this and a bomb was attached to the drone and was sent to an high official residence. And next is autonomous car.
지금 이 시간 대학에서 조금 고민하고 있는
And this is something that is
교통사고
research by Michigan University. When there's a traffic accident, the program within the autonomous car, should it place emphasis on safety of the driver or the safety of the pedestrian? And a lot of simulation is being done, but here involves the ethical issue or the human rights issue. So which human right is more valuable and important? Is it the driver or the pedestrian? So within the ESG, the issue of society is very important and very difficult and complex. And next is innovation and its relations to ESG. What I would like to emphasize here is that there are many issues here. There are social and ethical issues, social ethical issues. So at least in the process of development, the R&D principles and guidelines and AI and user protection, number 5. And number 12, re-recognition of human values. And lastly, governance, direction of governance of AI network systems. The engineers who are developing the technology should consider ethics in enhancing the value of technology innovation. And if so, there will be more acceptance of these new technologies. With this, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
이것으로 오늘 마련된 총 6편의 섹션 강의를 모두 마치도록 하겠습니다.
With this, we will conclude all the presentation for this session. And I would like to thank all the participants and attendants joining us virtually and also physically at Kintex. And with that, I would like to bring the first day of this conference to close. Thank you very much.